For only the third time in 243 years, a US president has been impeached. Donald Trump's been charged with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The vote came following more than 8 hours of divisive debate in the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives. Shihab Rattansi begins our coverage from Washington, D.C.
The result was never in doubt. Donald Trump is the third US president in history to be impeached.
Article 1 is adopted. Article 2 is adopted.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Over several hours, the Democrats repeated arguments that have now become very familiar. The president needs to be held to account.
Madam Speaker, the House of Representatives must now consider 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump. The first article charges that the president used his public office to coerce a foreign government into attacking his political rival. The second article charges that the president took extreme and unprecedented steps to obstruct our investigation into his conduct. Taken together, the 2 articles charge that President Trump placed his private political interests above our national security, above our elections, and above our system of checks and balances.
What we are discussing today is the established fact that the president violated the Constitution. It is a matter of fact that the president is an ongoing threat to our national security and the integrity of our elections, the basis of our democracy.
A central charge against the president is that he was demanding the Ukrainian government announce an investigation into Joe Biden and his son Hunter in return for an official White House visit and military aid. However, the Republicans argue that the Democrats have failed conclusively to prove that case. They say President Trump was right to be concerned about corruption in Ukraine. In addition, they argue that Hunter Biden's position on the board of a Ukrainian energy company while his father was taking the lead in Ukrainian policy as vice president does warrant further examination. And they argue that impeachment is simply an attempt to overturn the results of the 2016 election.
We on the Republican side have no problem taking our case to the majority and to the people of this country because they elected Donald Trump, and it is a matter for the voters, not this House, not in this way, not in the way this is being done. It has trampled everything this House believes in.
Our Democrat colleagues have weaponized the impeachment provision of the Constitution to nullify the votes of 63 million Americans who elected President Donald J. Trump. This is not about a phone call or Ukraine or even his use of the executive privilege. You have to remember that 95 of the Democrats on this floor today voted to impeach Donald Trump before the July 25th phone call ever happened between President Trump and President Zelensky.
A trial is expected to be held in the Senate in January. The Republican leadership is hoping for a relatively quick process of perhaps 2 weeks. The president is almost certain to be acquitted. The poll suggests the U.S. public is evenly split on impeachment. In fact, Donald Trump's approval ratings have increased since impeachment proceedings began in the autumn. Shihab Rattansi, Al Jazeera, Washington.
While the vote was happening, Donald Trump was telling supporters at a rally in Michigan that the impeachment was an attempted coup.
Through their depraved actions today, crazy Nancy Pelosi's House Democrats have branded themselves with an eternal mark of shame, and it really is. It's a disgrace. You are the ones interfering in America's elections. You are the ones subverting America's democracy. We did nothing wrong, nothing whatsoever. This was just an excuse. You are the ones obstructing justice. You are the ones bringing pain and suffering to our republic for your own selfish, personal, political, and partisan gain.
Well, we have 3 correspondents across this story. In a moment, we'll go to John Hendren at the Trump rally in Michigan. We have White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett. First, though, we'll go to Heidi Jo Castro, who's on Capitol Hill. Some people, of course, have been watching this incessantly, hour on hour. Others are just joining us. So let's take a step back and have a look here, Heidi, at what has taken place. An historic moment, the impeachment of a president. Take us through it.
Absolutely, Stan. You know, it's been 2 months of this impeachment inquiry, but really it's been 2+ years of this partisan vitriol that's all climaxed at these historic votes that we just saw, which formally impeaches President Trump. And we saw these votes on the 2 articles of impeachment unfold almost clearly and solely along partisan lines, all but 4 Democrats in the House of Representatives voting to approve the impeachment of Trump. There was one independent who sided with those Democrats in approving the articles, and then every single one of the Republican members in the House voted against the impeachment. Not a surprise at all, given all the partisan arguments that we've seen unfold today, as well as through these last few weeks. And those arguments have been pretty much the same, a repetition. Republicans saying that this entire impeachment process is illegitimate, that Democrats are pursuing it out of partisan distaste for Trump and for his policies, while Democrats are framing this in historic terms, saying that the founders of this country had envisioned using this tool of impeachment to hold those who occupy the highest offices in the land to account when they betray their country. And they're saying Donald Trump did that when he requested that Ukraine interfere with the upcoming presidential elections. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke with reporters shortly after these historic votes.
A great day for the Constitution of the United States. A sad one for America, that the president's reckless activities necessitated our having to introduce articles of impeachment. And so I view this vote, as something that we did to honor the vision of our founders to establish a republic, the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform to defend our democracy and that republic, and the aspirations of our children that they will always live in a democracy, and that we have tried to do everything we can to make sure that that is their reality.
Heidi, now the process is that the articles of impeachment go to the Senate, where there will be a trial. That hasn't happened yet. Take us through what the stages are from here.
That's right. So now House Speaker Pelosi is set to choose the impeachment managers. These are members of the House who will serve essentially as the prosecutors in the Senate trial. But that zeroes in on a key question that we still have unanswered, which is, when is she going to make that selection of the impeachment managers, and when are they going to literally walk across the Capitol and deliver these articles to the Senate chamber, which would officially pass this into the next stage of the impeachment? Well, she was asked that by reporters in this press conference, and she was very coy with her answer. She would not lay out a timeline, and in fact said that she would not make a decision until she's convinced that the Senate will hold a fair trial. So that really leaves things open, and we are uncertain exactly when this impeachment will proceed forward.
Heidi, thank you for that. Well, Donald Trump has been rallying supporters at Battle Creek in Michigan for more than an hour now. He's just wrapped up that speech. John Hendren is there. John, what has he had to say?
Well, the president was clearly energized by this impeachment process and by the crowd that was here in Battle Creek, Michigan. He spoke for, by my count, a little under 2 hours. And he spoke for about a third of that, according to his prepared remarks anyway, about a third of that was on impeachment. You heard the quotes earlier where he said the Democrats have branded themselves with a mark of shame. He said they are the ones who are endangering democracy. And he gets energized by these crowds, and he continues on. He went a little more than 30 minutes longer than he was expected to speak. And he was received, of course, enthusiastically. This was a crowd of many thousands, by one count, about 18,000. Some of them were waiting outside, along with a very small number of protesters. But the president was not at all cowed. He offered no apologies. He was defiant, and he made it clear that he's going to seek re-election in 2020. And to do that, he needs the help of states like Michigan. Michigan is one of those states, the swing states, where he won by a very narrow margin. No Republican had done that since George Herbert Walker Bush in 1988. And Trump won with 47.3% of the vote to Hillary Clinton's 47% of the vote. That's about 50,000 votes, and that is about the number who vote right here in this county. So he's in one of those places that he needs to win in 2020, and by the look of the crowd that is here, he's certainly got a lot of supporters here.
John, thank you for that. John Hendren there at that Trump rally. Kimberly Halkett is at the White House. Kimberly, this is the third president now to be impeached, but the difference here is he is going to seek re-election. The question, I suppose, out of all of this is how this is going to play politically. What's your assessment?
Yeah, this is we're in uncharted territory, as we've said so many times with this president and this presidency. And the fact that voters will ultimately have the ability to weigh in on whether or not the Congress acted appropriately is certainly remarkable. Donald Trump has already commented on the fact that he believes that this has helped his poll numbers, that they have gone up, particularly in battleground states. I think it's also important to note here that Donald Trump has essentially, as a master marketer, he's taken what most people would see as a very devastating moment, and already he's shining it up and packaging it as something that's not hurting him, but is hurting the opposition Democrats. Essentially, he made the argument that they have the stain on their sort of legacy, not him, even though this is, of course, a historic moment for the president in that he's going into the history books as the third president to be impeached. This is the sort of trademark defiance of Donald Trump. And while it is a very somber moment, we're also seeing his White House team also working in concert, rebranding all of this. As we saw the Democrats like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi talking about this very somber moment, the press secretary was tweeting out the moment where after the first article of impeachment, Democrats cheered. These are the kinds of moments and those contrasts that Donald Trump supporters seize upon. And I think it was really notable as the president was talking, there was somebody wearing a T-shirt that said, "Keep Trump, impeach Congress." Very quickly, he was elected to be the disruptor in chief in Washington. He kept that promise and he wants to do it again.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that. Kimberly, thank you so much for that. Kimberly Halkett from the White House.